Ayes are 230. The nays are 197. Present is 1. Article 1 is adopted.
And there you have it, Donald Trump.
The question is on adoption of Article 2. The question is on the adoption of Article 2. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek president? For what purpose?
I ask for, Madam Speaker, I ask for a roll.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
I ask for a roll call vote.
A recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will so rise. That will be in order. A sufficient number have arisen. A recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
Okay, so I just want to bring you up to date because something momentous has just happened. Donald Trump has been impeached. He is only the third ever American president to have been impeached. This House of Representatives has just voted in favor of the first article of impeachment, which is abuse of power. They are now moving on to the second article of impeachment. But whatever happens on that article, we know that he has been impeached because it only takes one article to pass for him to have been so. This is a 5-minute process. It's quicker than the last one. They're going to try and get this one done quickly. Nancy Pelosi saying they're going to have an electronic vote on this one. Jonathan Turley, the third American president, has been impeached.
That's right. The smallest number of articles to impeach a president with is actually 2, because that was Bill Clinton. So they would have to pass the second article to certainly rise to that level. It was 11 articles of impeachment.
But he is still impeached.
He most certainly is. He's on his way eventually to the Senate. You'll notice that there was a moment that was quite telling. When she was given the tally sheet and she announced that the first article had passed, applause started to break out on the Democratic side, and Pelosi turned around and signaled to the members to stop. And the Democratic members were told not to do victory laps, not to applaud.
She keeps the tight. She runs the tight ship.
She did, but it was a very interesting. The glare that she gave over to her members could really stop a clock. I mean, it was very clear. So, regardless what happens on Article 2, the next step is that they will have to select House managers. These are effectively the prosecutors in the Senate trial. It's a position that a lot of these members want. Adam Schiff is likely to want to be effectively the head House manager. He was my opposing counsel in the last impeachment because I represented Judge Porteous, and he was essentially the top head, House manager then. There's a great number of members who are trying to get on that list, and so that could be somewhat interesting. It's Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer, the majority leader, that will have a pronounced voice in it.
I'm listening to you. I'm also keeping an eye on that tally because just as last time, the magic number for people that are watching is 216. We're at 191 in favor of the second article of impeachment. John, just remind our viewers, abuse of power, obstruction of Congress. I keep saying obstruction of justice, it's obstruction of Congress. 2 different things. What exactly is the difference between these 2 articles?
So the first charge, if you like, call it a charge, call it the rap sheet, call it whatever you like, is one of the high crimes and misdemeanors. The first one is abuse of office, and the charge is that the president, by seeking the help of a foreign leader, the Ukrainian president, to dig up dirt on a political rival, Joe Biden, the former vice president, who is running for the Democratic nomination in 2020, the president misused office because he was seeking it for personal political gain, not for national interest. That's the first charge. The second charge is that obstruction of Congress took place because the president instructed administration officials not to participate and didn't hand over any of the papers that the House had asked for as part of the Intelligence Committee investigation. And so that formed the second charge. Now, there were some Democrats who wanted it to go wider and go back into the time of the Mueller report and obstruction of justice that Mueller said was potential. And the decision driven by Nancy Pelosi, was let us keep this to as limited a charge sheet as possible and not just keep widening it out. And that is, so what we're getting now is the second vote on obstruction of Congress that they accuse the president of doing.
Well, the numbers are quite quickly clicking up there, 205 there are
Remember,
now.
this is a 5-minute vote, so they've got
to move much faster. There are 3 Democrats who have voted against this article of impeachment. We had 2 on the last one, 3 on this one, so some who are a little bit more cautious about this obstruction of Congress, and 1 present on both of them. One of the other reasons that they only wanted 2 articles of impeachment, Jonathan Turley, was because the Democrats felt that it was going to be easier if they could just pass both of them. You remember from Bill Clinton, you were just saying this a couple of minutes ago, 2 of them passed. There were 4 articles, 2 passed, 2 didn't pass. For the Democrats to be able to say, right, we had 2 articles, we passed both of those articles as a cleaner rap sheet, I think is how John Sokol would describe it.
I think Article 2 is going to be the most controversial and could face a threshold challenge in the Senate, because basically the objection raised by some of us, and certainly I addressed this in my testimony, is that this was one of the fastest investigations in history, if not the fastest. And then what the Democrats were saying is that because Donald Trump went to court to challenge the demand for these documents and did not hand over the documents or make the witnesses available, he was obstructing Congress. And that raises a real serious question as to whether you can make going to court effectively a high crime or misdemeanor. And both Bill Clinton and Richard Nixon not only went to court, they went all the way to the Supreme Court on issues related to their impeachment, and then they were impeached. And so there's a question as to whether the Senate may want to look at Article 2 for a threshold vote, that they may object to Article 2 on principle.
We're talking about procedure here, but let's not forget this moment. John Sokol, what does it mean to Donald Trump that he's just become only the 3rd ever American president to be impeached?
You've seen a variety of emotional responses from the president to the threat of impeachment. First was, bring it on, give it to me, let's get this over and done with. But you've also seen, and I think if you kind of look at the contours of the letter that he wrote to Nancy Pelosi last night, there was anger, astonishment, incredulity that this was happening. There was also some self-pity, where he talked at one stage about to Nancy Pelosi, you've barely been able to conceal your hatred for me. There are other bits where he is very pugnacious and says, it's a hoax, this is a con on, and this is deceiving the American people. So I think there are a whole range of emotions that he's gone through, but overwhelmingly, ask the question simply, did Donald Trump want to be impeached? Answer emphatically no. And this will hurt.
Nancy Pelosi is back in her chair. The time is up on that. That was a speed round of voting. There are 215 votes at the moment in the yes column. We're waiting to see if that clicks up to 216. She's waiting to tally all of the votes. I imagine that some of those no votes, you see them now, 216. So some of those no votes now, this was either miscounts or people, I guess, at the last minute potentially changing their vote, but usually it's to do with the tallying process, that they voted the wrong way by mistake. And so in a minute we will have, I imagine, Nancy Pelosi gaveling in as well this second round. And then all of the focus will shift from the House of Representatives into the Senate for the impeachment process. That's in January. But tonight it will shift then as well to Michigan, where Donald Trump is in the middle of giving an election campaign rally, effectively, to supporters up in Michigan as this process is taking place down here in Washington. This is one of those extraordinary moments where we're having both of those things up on our screen. We're waiting for Nancy Pelosi there. Jonathan Turley, one thing that strikes me is that, we were talking earlier about the level of public interest. I think that I was here during the Bill Clinton impeachment process. People were very interested. Now, I don't know if that was because it was about sex and because it was about a marriage, and this is about something a bit more complicated, but there was a lot more interest, that seemed to me, around the country in Bill Clinton's impeachment process than there is perhaps in this one. And maybe it's the complicated nature of this case.
Yeah,
All the investigations have been going on since the beginning of this presidency.
Yeah, it's sort of funny because with the Clinton impeachment, people were following it very, very closely, all of the testimony. People are following this closely. It's just that they're not very interested in hearing the other side. They're equally, if not more, invested in this impeachment than Clinton. It's just that they're not as engaged with the evidence.
Don't you think there's something about the wearying nature of this presidency? There is so much noise 24/7 that it becomes harder to delineate between signal and what is just the constant noise coming at you.
And we have had a year or so of the Mueller investigation as well, so people have had an awful lot of investigations to get used to. We understand that the White House has already sent out a fundraising request on the back of these impeachment votes tied to the impeaching. They do think that this is a way for them to raise money and to raise support, and within minutes, having been impeached, the president sent out a fundraising appeal. So let's just have a look at what's happening on the House floor there as we watch Nancy Pelosi. I'm keeping an eye on that, and she will be doing the same thing that we saw last time, and counting the final votes. Here we go. The people are coming up to her with the final tallies. Then she will gavel that, and we will have the same process last time. Jonathan?
Yeah, the clerk will hand her a piece of paper. He's sitting down below her with the final tally. And then she will effectively deliver the coup de grace, and he will be impeached on 2 articles. I think historically, one thing is clear about this, and that is this is a case of a president who literally counterpunched his way into an impeachment. And that's what's the fascinating aspect of this. He prides himself on being a counterpuncher, and he's been very successful as a real estate tycoon and later as a politician.
And you might think that a president who's undergone a whole series of investigations in the Mueller report on the issue of foreign intervention in the electoral process would be extremely careful about what they said to any foreign leader about the democratic electoral process. And yet there is President Trump, after the Mueller report is wrapped up, talking to the president of Ukraine, suggesting that there should be investigations as a favour.
The call, a lot of Republicans think, was suboptimal. It was not an ideal call that the president had.
As Jonathan, you said in your testimony.
If he had expressed some contrition about the way he handled himself, I wonder whether we would be going through all of this